UFC 257 on Saturday, January 23rd from Fight Island in Abu Dhabi features a stacked card, ESPN Plus pay-per-view style, and South Florida is more than well represented. Antonio Carlos Jr. and Amanda Rivas are on the show, getting ready for the co-main event and main event. In the main event, Dustin Poirier, the number 2 ranked lightweight from American Top Team, faces number 4 ranked Conor McGregor. And how about this? In the co-main event, Michael Chandler of Sanford MMA makes his UFC debut. Everyone's talking about that. Against number 6 lightweight, a tough combatant, Dan Hooker. Michael Chandler, sir, how are you doing? How is Fight Island going? And man, you're getting ready for this big fight, UFC debut. What's going through your mind, sir?
I am doing great, man. Thank you for having me. We're in Las Vegas for about the next 18 hours, and then on that plane, the 16-hour flight to Fight Island. The UFC left no stone unturned in their precautionary measures to make sure everybody is as safe as possible. So we all fly to Vegas. We take a coronavirus test here, make sure everybody tests out negative. Then everybody with a negative test hops on that flight, and then we fly to Fight Island and do more tests. So it's a bit of a process, but it is. I've done it once already back in October, so I kind of know what to expect, and I am just excited as ever to make my UFC debut here in 9 days.
What does this say about your career? You were tremendous, outstanding with Bellator, and now you're getting this chance with UFC. 2 great organizations. I know you respect Bellator very much. What is it like for you to have this opportunity now at UFC?
Yeah, I love the path that I took here to this day. I love what it has made me. I love the resume that I have amassed. But fighting in the UFC was something that I always wanted to do. It was always something that I thought may or may not end up presenting itself, and I'm just extremely happy that it did. Testing free agency, getting the offer from the UFC, taking the offer from the UFC, and then now here we are a couple days away from making my UFC Octagon debut. It's going to be one of the highlights of my career, if not the highlight of my career. This next chapter of my career, I spent the first decade building brick by boring brick this body of work that I have put in the mixed martial arts world, and now I put a nice big cap on it by going out there, getting my first win in the UFC, which is the ultimate proving grounds for mixed martial arts, the biggest organization, the most eyeballs. It is the upper echelon of mixed martial arts competition, and I get to go out there against a tough guy in Dan Hooker and make that my first test here in the UFC in this quest to go get that UFC title here in 2021.
You built very strongly with that, and this fight is a very good competitive fight. For you as a fighter, that's what you wanted. You wanted to come in UFC right away and get your acumen, your prowess against the best right away?
Yeah, that was kind of the plan all along. Let's be completely honest. I was in a very comfortable situation with Bellator. I was in a very secure situation with Bellator. I was being taken care of. I was being paid well. The level of competition, the depth of the roster wasn't there like the UFC was. I was going to have definitely a couple tough competitors. I'm not going to disregard that there are some highly talented guys in the organization, but the depth wasn't there. I knew coming into the UFC, every single fight was going to push me to the limit. Every single fight was going to push me as a man, as a competitor, as a human being. And Dan Hooker is that guy. We went through some names right away: Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira. We tried to get the Justin Gaethje fight to happen. Nothing ever transpired, and that's for numerous reasons, a lot of which were out of my control. Well, actually, all of which were out of my control. And Dan Hooker was the one guy who said yes. He's a tough New Zealander with a ton of great attributes that I need to game plan to overcome, and I believe I'm going to do that next Saturday night. And like I said, throw me into the fire and see how I come out on the other end. either way, the question will be answered: how good am I come fight night?
Michael Chandler, Sanford MMA. That's how they do it from Sanford MMA in South Florida. Michael, have you ever been to New Zealand?
I have not been to New Zealand. It's definitely on my bucket list. My wife and I definitely want to go out there to Australia, New Zealand, both of them. So, actually this is really just giving me a time to reflect, thinking about, a kid in Dan Hooker and a kid in Michael Chandler, born on opposite ends of the globe, separated by oceans, and we get to go meet on Fight Island and compete against each other, man. The sport of mixed martial arts that the UFC has built here is nothing short of amazing. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Do you think when a fighter comes from another organization that the other fighters take that fighter, not you in particular, not as serious until they see you fight in their organization? Or do you think that that part of it doesn't matter? They just look at the fighter, not where they're coming from.
No, I think it definitely matters, and truthfully, I think that's why it was so hard to get a fight booked in the UFC. I think nobody wanted to be the first guy to step into the octagon with me. Everybody kind of wanted to see, it's kind of like all the kids showing up to the pool, and all like, no, you jump in first, everyone's just kind of dipping their toe in the water to test the temperature. And I completely get that. I think if anything, it's a testament to the body of work that I've put together. It's a testament to where the UFC regards me in the UFC lightweight division, the most electrifying division in the sport right now. And Dan Hooker, just plain and simple, was the only guy that said yes. So I think they all wanted to wait until somebody made the first move. Dan Hooker was the guy who stepped up, had the courage, had the bravery, and the will to say yes. And here we are, 9 days away.
Michael, when you're getting ready for a fight, are you watching a lot of video on that fighter? I won't ask you to go in strategy. That's on you all. You don't want to give away your strategy. I get it. But I'm just curious, when you're preparing and in that preparation, is there a lot of video work too on your end?
Yeah, a decent amount. There's only so many things you can really pick up from watching video. And truthfully, a guy like Dan Hooker, who we know he's a champion mindset. He's a champion inside the cage, champion outside the cage. The way he conducts himself, he's a consummate professional. So if you're expecting to see the exact same fighter that you're, on fight night that you've watched in tape, you're sorely mistaken. Of course, there's different habits, different idiosyncrasies, different tendencies that each fighter is going to keep carrying on into every single fight. I do it. Everybody does it. But for the most part, I focus 80% of my emphasis on how does Michael Chandler put himself in the best situation possible, the least path of resistance to gain the optimal amount of results. So I focus about 80% on myself. The other 20%, what are his strengths? What are his attributes? What are his certain downfalls or holes in his game where we can somewhat exploit those things? Where has he shown deficiencies? So really, most of the work is put in on myself. A little bit of film, and we're excited to go out there and put together a game plan that will be successful on fight night.
And Michael, you've been a lightweight, and you mentioned it. This lightweight division is very, very strong. How amped are you? And you talked a little bit about it, about the lightweight division UFC, and also, and I know it was a while ago, have you thought about another division, up or down, or no, this strictly lightweight, that's good, that's where you're going to be?
I think I'm definitely a great size for a lightweight. There's no way I could ever make 145, and fighting at 170, the weight is great, but the problem with 170 is you start getting into those guys. You think I'm fighting Dan Hooker, who's 6 foot. I mean, those guys can be 6'3", 6'4", and I'm over here at 5'9". I'm not trying to put myself at that big of a disadvantage. Now, jumping up in a weight like Connor did, fighting a lightweight at 170, I'd be interested in that. Diaz fight at 170, fighting any of these guys at 170. I mean, I'm here to have a blast and get into interesting fights. But lightweight for me is a great weight for me, and yeah, I think it is the most electrifying division in the UFC right now. Obviously, Conor McGregor holds a lot of that weight. Being the co-main event on his return is a great way to introduce myself. But man, you think about Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson. I mean, these are names that are synonymous with champions, with great fights, awesome fights. And then you add Dan Hooker into the mix, Paul Felder, Ali Akeem. I mean, the lightweight division is awesome in the UFC, and truthfully, it's exactly why I wanted to come over to the UFC. It's exactly half the reason I signed with the UFC, the competition. Would I be able to lay my head on the pillow at night someday as a retired fighter if I never stepped into that UFC octagon against the best guys in the world? And now we get to answer those questions. I get the answer to those questions. And here we are 9 days away to start that journey.
And this big UFC 257 event, the main event and co-main event, features lightweights. So, very well said, Mr. Michael Chandler. It's interesting. That whole card is just very strong. What is that like, too, just being on a super card?
It's great. Obviously, as the competitor, I try to just be right here where my feet are. I try to focus right here where I am and try to compartmentalize and put it in a box as much as possible, because you start thinking about how many pay-per-view buys this is going to have and the eyeballs that are going to see this fight, the hype that's about to come on fight week, and being on the co-main event, and even during COVID right now, are a little bit tampered down, a little bit smaller than they are, a lot smaller than they normally would be from Conor McGregor fight card. But there's still a lot of pressure that you can put on yourself in an event of this magnitude. So for me, just focus on the task at hand, be right here where my feet are, and enjoy every single moment that I get, because I am by no means close to retirement, but it's going to be in the next probably 3 to 5 years, if you will. So I want to enjoy as much as I can here in the UFC, spend my time, have some fun, and soak it all in.
It is your UFC debut, and I'm wondering, not that you look ahead, you've got to look at the task at hand and what's in front of you, but do you know or can think of what a victory over Dan, where it gets you next?
It puts me into the top 5 right away, and then anybody in that top 5 could be fighting for the title. It's really just what fight makes the most sense for the organization, for the promoter, Dana White. I think my name and my performance being right next to Conor's, right next to Poirier's, whoever wins that fight, definitely puts me somewhat in pole position to be able to it be ingrained in people's minds. Man, Chandler went out there, had a dominant victory, and then right after that, Conor had a dominant victory, or Poirier had a dominant victory. And it's no secret that it's been said that either of those guys, whoever wins that fight, Conor or Poirier, is probably next in line for the title. So if I'm in the top 5, I get that win, I do it in electrifying fashion. We all got to ask ourselves, why shouldn't it be me? So we'll see. If I have to fight another fight between this fight and the title, so be it. But I'm here to fight the best guys in the world. Dan Hooker's number 1, and then anybody who's ranked ahead of me can get it after that.
How was the training camp for this fight?
It's been great. I put 8 weeks in down in Florida at Sanford MMA, and no hiccups. Every single one of these training camps, I feel like I just keep getting better and better and better. Wisdom is a great thing. Training regimens and having a great training facility, great training partners, great coaches. It's just absolutely awesome. You brought up South Florida. I mean, we got Dustin Poirier. Sanford MMA doesn't, but Dustin Poirier's in the main event here. I'm in the co-main event. Here in a couple weeks, my teammate Gilbert Burns is fighting for the UFC title against Kamaru Usman, who is a former teammate, trained in most of his training career in South Florida. Just an awesome place for mixed martial arts, and enjoying the South Florida weather during wintertime and all the great training.
And I'm going to wrap this up, and thank you so much, Michael Chandler, and look forward to seeing you UFC 257. So then, who's with you for this fight? And did you do anything different in preparation, not strategy-wise, but just because it's been a little bit of a while for a fight. I know you've been training. You've been also projected to be in a fight if somebody had COVID or something like that. But I'm wondering who you brought for this one, and was the training pretty much the same as far as the routine part of training goes?
Yeah, it's always usually pretty much business as usual. The only difference is I have my son down with me in Florida for almost 4 weeks, which was absolutely awesome. You know, I rented 2 different houses this time. I'm in the process of buying a house down there, so I will actually own something. But that was the only thing that was really different. Other than that, just training as usual. Head coach and striking coach is Henry Hoopt. We already have Kami Barzini out there because he's cornering Nick Lentz. He's already on Fight Island, so we'll meet him out there. He's my mixed martial arts, grappling, cage work, wrestling coach, and then my training partner Marquez Jackson. So keep my circle the same, my training circle the same, and go out there and get a victory on January 23rd.
There it is, UFC 257 with Michael Chandler, Sanford MMA. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thanks.